Alright, welcome back to the channel, everyone. Welcome to your Enhancement Talent review for WWE Monday Night Raw September 23rd, 2019. A very wrestling-heavy show on this one. We've got some big stuff coming out of it with the Rey Mysterio title shot next week, the ending with the Fiend and Seth Rollins. We're going to get into all of that and more as we go through this thing piece by piece, segment by segment, as we always do here on the channel. And this Raw show started off with a recap of last week with Seth Rollins and the Fiend, the ending of last week's show with Rollins being attacked 5-on-1, then the Fiend attacking Kane, who had made the save for him, but not attacking Seth Rollins, instead only playing mind games with Seth Rollins. So we go from that to Seth's music hitting. He cuts a promo. He continues to try to be a babyface, but no one cares. He points to what he's done before, beating Brock, Braun, etc., etc. And then he says that he will survive and prevail against Bray. It's the slogan he's going with, survive and prevail. Braun Strowman interrupts this. Braun says, "If you have something to say to me, Seth, say it to my face." Braun even throws a dig in at Bray Wyatt, calling him a psychopath. Braun and Seth go back and forth, but Seth more or less challenges Braun to a match. Braun says, "You're going to get these hands," and we have a match for later in the night. It would end up being the main event, unfortunately. So, more on that later. But the important thing that I want to talk about here is, what the hell is a season premiere? Since when do we have season premieres in wrestling? That's a new one for me. But I guess next week's Raw is going to be the season premiere of Raw. But it also begs the question of, if that is the season premiere, then wouldn't this show be the season finale? But they never referred to it as that. So, we'll get that show next week. And our opening match for this show is going to be the Viking Raiders going up against the OC of Gallows and Anderson. The OC finally have new music, which is great. I thought it sounded good, kind of generic metal-ish, but they needed something different, so I definitely won't complain about that. AJ Styles ends up getting ejected for interfering as he's complaining after that at the ramp. Cedric Alexander comes out and attacks him, throws him in the LED board, throws his own jacket at him. So Cedric, after being quote-unquote buried the last week in the pay-per-view show by AJ, I guess the feud will continue, so that has to assume that Cedric is going to get another shot at this. So, not sure how I feel about that. I feel like with AJ beating him as convincingly as he did, that there's not much intrigue really for a rematch. But that's the route they're going, it seems. And maybe by the end of this we can help Cedric get more over as a result of it, but I don't know that the steps they took in the previous weeks were the right steps to take there. So after AJ gets ejected, the Viking Raiders are going to end up getting a win with a Viking experience and a dive taking out Gallows so he couldn't break up the pin. Anderson eats the pin. This was fine. It put a bow on the whole Raiders versus Gallows and Anderson feud that they set up at the Tag Team Turmoil match a while back. So there was that. And it gives the Viking Raiders more than just squash matches, so I'm all for that. We had Michael Cole doing a sit-down interview here with Becky Lynch. And I have to say, I have to commend Becky Lynch for just being such a freaking awesome promo. She was absolutely great in this segment. And I'll continue that thought in just a minute. Doing the live stream here. We're going to send out the link. One moment. But yeah, so, carrying on. That's the issues of not being used to doing this live. Becky Lynch, such a great promo she was here. She says right away that Ronda killed the women's division. Basically that she squashed everyone and then left. And then there was no one left to face. So she cites that as the reason that she calls out people like Sasha. And that Becky herself can't make history on her own. She needs challengers. She needs worthy opponents. So that is why she wants the best version of Sasha Banks. Cole insisted that Sasha Banks is on some sort of hot streak. I guess. I mean, she returned and maybe won a few matches, but I don't know if it was really that much of a hot streak. Becky says that it was vintage Sasha, which is funny because she's talking to Michael Cole. When she ran for the exits during their match at Clash of Champions. She says that Sasha tried to end her being Becky, pronouns pal, when she came back with the steel chair attack, so Becky was out for revenge on the Clash of Champions match. But now she can focus on it being Hell in a Cell, the Cell being able to keep Sasha in, so she can focus on dishing out as much punishment to Sasha as she possibly can. Excellent promo from Becky. She is the absolute best. So much credit to give her for this sit-down interview. Very good stuff. We had Rusev squashing... Wait for it. Wait for it. EC3, who was finally on television. The same EC3 we have not seen in forever. Rusev had no Maria, no Lana, even though last week it was assumed that Rusev was the father of Maria's child. This week he's out there by himself. There were "We Want Lana" chants from the crowd, and the commentary did at least mention that Lana wasn't there, conspicuous by her absence, as Corey Graves said. So at least they are not ignoring that. But other than that, yeah, just a squash match. So, I don't know if they really have anything in mind for Rusev. We'll see what they do. Post-draft, I guess, is going to be the telling card for that. We had Sasha Banks versus Nikki Cross, one half of the Women's Tag Team Champions, mind you. This match goes a long time. You know, they both worked well together, but it was a bit of a drag. There were a couple dragging matches throughout this show, which I'm not totally against that they gave matches more time this week. Definitely felt like that. There was less matches, probably, but the matches they had a lot more time. So that's not a bad idea, but, that'll cause some sort of dragging in some parts, and I felt like this was one of it. But got good towards the end. Nikki hits her neck breaker finish, but Bayley is going to get on the apron to distract both Nikki and the referee. Alexa takes out Bayley, tosses her into an office chair. Cross hits a cross body. See what I did there? Banks rolls through into the Banks statement. That would get the tap-out victory for Sasha as Nikki Cross taps out. Sasha kicks Nikki while she's down afterwards. Alexa comes in to try to defend her, but she ends up eating a Banks statement as well, and Sasha stands tall over both women. Both of the women who are the tag team champions that get taken out by one. But nonetheless, I mean, this was fine, but one would have to assume that this is going to lead to Sasha and Bayley getting a tag title match against Nikki and Alexa. So I'm not sure if that's the end route there. I'd have to assume it would. But we're going to have Sasha versus Alexa Bliss next week. Sasha was sure to mock Alexa Bliss during this match. She did the whole run and stop and slap in the corner thing that Alexa always does. But we all know the quote-unquote history that at least people think is there. I mean, we have no way of knowing. We're not talking to them on a daily basis, so there's no really way of knowing what sort of relationship those two have together, but they will have a match next week. I don't remember them working together a whole lot. I remember they had the one SummerSlam match that had like a count-out finish or something stupid. But we'll see how that goes. I would have to assume that Bayley and Banks will end up with the tag team title match, which I'm curious to see how that works if they get separated in the draft. If we are truly going to have brand exclusivity, how does that work with the women's tag titles that float between both brands? These are the questions that have yet to be answered. Brock Lesnar was announced that he will be at Raw next week. For what, I don't know, other than it being the season premiere, which I guess is important all of a sudden. He'll also be on the SmackDown show that same week, so I could see it easily just being to hype that appearance. We had another segment with the Street Marks, as I am now referring to them as. Miz comes in, announces his wife gave birth to a baby girl on Friday, so congrats to Miz and Maurice. And he says, unlike the Canellises, they know who the dad is. Nice. And he also announces that next week on the season premiere of Raw, Miz TV will have Hulk Hogan. When his name was mentioned, it was booed. And Ric Flair, who I believe may also both be names that are going to be on the SmackDown show. So, I don't know if a lot of this stuff is going to be to just promote the SmackDown show that Friday. We'll have to see. I mean, I can't imagine Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair in a segment are going to do much other than that. Unless we're going to have that great Hulk Hogan versus Ric Flair match on this show. Lacey Evans beats Ember Moon with the sharpshooter. I typed this, no joke, in my notes before the match even started. And yeah, that's exactly what happened. Ember Moon goes for the Eclipse, but Evans meets her on the apron. Women's rights, topples Ember, knocks her off the rope. Then Lacey gets in the ring, puts the sharpshooter in. Ember taps out. Natalya, who was watching backstage afterwards, has an interview and says that she will show Evans how to correctly apply the sharpshooter when she makes her tap out. So, the feud that no one cares about is still going on. They're tied at 1 apiece over the last few weeks, and now Lacey's won 2 matches with the sharpshooter, which I guess is supposed to offend Natalya somehow. So we'll get another match between those two at some point, probably next week for the season premiere. That's where everything seems to be happening. After this is where we really got to a good point in the show where I could finally be excited about something with the Firefly Funhouse, the best segment of any show it is a part of. Bray is in the Funhouse hanging up a picture of Kane with the eyes cut out. Then Huskus the Pig and Rambling Rabbit are playing, and they're fighting over this Seth Rollins action figure. Bray comes in. He grabs the action figure. He says, sharing is not easy, but it's good. But it's not good, rather. It's not good to be too attached to something. If you love something too much, it makes you weak, and it also makes you vulnerable to disappointment, neglect, and loneliness. And Bray goes on to say he knows what it's like to be abandoned by those you care about most. That's a little foreshadowing, too, for later in the night, now that I read that back. Rambling Rabbit says he doesn't want the Fiend to hurt Seth Rollins, because him and Huskus are talking about how big fans they are of Seth Rollins. So Bray says maybe he wants to protect Seth Rollins. And instantly what I thought of here was the hurt heel gloves. Maybe Rollins is the one that Bray is listening to the heel glove. Bray says the Fiend doesn't like to share, but you two can. And he breaks the Seth Rollins action figure in half. Bray then says sharing is caring. He goes into the blank stare, the maniacal sort of stare and deadpan into the camera. Get the Fiend cutaways in there. And then the smiling, see you in hell. That was awesome. Great stuff from Bray, as always. R-Truth and Carmella come out, and when R-Truth is around with the 24/7 title, the barrage of low-card catering talents are sure to follow. Carmella fends them off, telling them to stop, and then requests a microphone. Says she's tired of the whole strenuous nature of the 24/7 title, that someone is always chasing them. Says she can't deal with it anymore. R-Truth hugs Carmella. Carmella then rolls up Truth with a schoolgirl to win the title. And Carmella finally wins the title. I don't know how long I've been waiting for that to happen, but it finally happened. Truth is stunned initially, but then he embraces it. What a good friend Truth is. Just got turned on by Carmella to win the title, but they're still friends. He embraces it. But now that Carmella has the title, all the guys surrounding ringside, they're like, oh well, I guess we can't try to roll up a woman. We can't do any schoolboys on her. So now a bunch of women wrestlers come out and chase Carmella. I couldn't even tell who was there. I know for sure I saw Sarah Logan. I'm sure Dana Brooke was out there. I couldn't get a head count, though. Didn't really see them well enough. But the lasting image here is all of the male geeks that are just standing on the apron with a look on their face that just says, "Welp, back to catering, I guess." Renee Young said that Graves can finally consummate the title instead of Drake Maverick doing it. Which Graves says, too late for that. Tasteful. We had Chad Gable versus Baron Corbin. This is the rematch from the same Chad Gable versus Baron Corbin match we saw last week for the King of the Ring finals. Corbin says, Corbin cuts a promo beforehand. I'm sure he made a short joke somewhere in there. And he said that this match won't last long. Which told me right away that Gable was going to win with a roll-up in like 5 seconds, but that's not what happened. But that's how I read it. Corbin also had a new King of the Ring get-up, because, Chad Gable destroyed his on SmackDown last week. So Corbin had a whole, I guess, wolves sort of thing, for the cape. And the crown was a more steel sort of feel. So whatever that was, I guess it's more fitting for him. So all good with that. And his music now too has it's the same music, but it cuts away into the royalty sort of music. Anyway, I was wrong about this match being a quick win for Gable. Instead, this match goes long. And just like the Banks and Cross match earlier, it was a pretty good match, but it drags a bit in the beginning and middle portions. But this did get really good in the end, and these two definitely have good chemistry together, which we saw last week. Especially just this point with Gable getting the near falls, hitting the moonsault was a great near fall, all that gubbins. Gable gets the ankle lock in, just as he did last week. Corbin is crawling to try to get to the ropes, but instead of getting the ropes, he grabs the scepter and gets himself disqualified and beats down Gable after the match. So Corbin has to resort to disqualifying himself to prevent himself from losing to Gable. So that's fine. It leads to another match, which I'm hoping that Gable is eventually going to get the win. I would have to assume that's the end goal. I would have preferred not to see this match twice within a week. But, both matches were good. The Authors of Pain got another vignette. In the middle of this vignette, they decided that rather than telling everyone how much of a badass team they are, they're gonna show us. And so they walk out of the room that they're recording in, and they go and beat up Heath Slater and I think No Way Jose in a hallway. Because nothing says we're badass like beating up a couple of jobbers. Just ask the Viking Raiders how that got them so over. After this, we had the 5-way elimination match. The winner is going to face Seth Rollins for the Universal title on the season premiere. Next week, it is Rey Mysterio versus Ricochet versus AJ Styles versus Bobby Roode versus Shinsuke Nakamura. I don't know why the hell Nakamura's in this match when he's on SmackDown and is the Intercontinental Champion. I also forgot that Braun versus Rollins was a thing that's going to happen in this show. So I thought that this match was going to go 45 minutes. Because it was 10:15. I was ready to be okay with that, but it was not to be. This was a really fun match, so just to go through some of the notes I had in order. Ricochet and Rey show off with some flips to take everyone out, and then it goes to commercial in the early going. AJ and Bobby Roode work together on Ricochet for a moment. They get the lightest TNA chance that could be heard on camera. Ricochet hits a recoil on Roode, who sells it beautifully, like a stunner almost, just jump back in the air. Nakamura comes in with the Kinshasa to Ricochet and eliminates him. Ricochet was like the only person I was interested in winning this, so naturally he would be the first eliminated. Nakamura and AJ have a good back and forth with some strike exchanges, but Rey comes in. He hits a 619 on Nakamura, but AJ is going to end up laying out Rey on the apron with a brainbuster. He then takes out Nakamura with a phenomenal forearm, which completely whiffed. Way overshot this thing, but he gets the pin with it anyway. Rude then capitalizes on that, picks up AJ for the glorious DDT and eliminates him, leaving just Rude and Rey. Now that I think of it, I don't know if there were disqualifications as a possibility to be eliminated. If there weren't, I don't know why Zayn or the OC didn't try to get involved. But now that I think of it being an elimination match, maybe it would make more sense for there to be disqualifications. Normally in those multi-man matches, there are no DQs, but if it's elimination, they could certainly do it that way. Rude and Rey go back and forth for a bit. Rey goes for 619, gets caught with a spine buster. Rude goes for the glorious DDT, but Rey counters, sending Rude into the ropes for the 619. Finishes it with a frog splash. And Rey, surprisingly, I thought Rude was going to win this, but Rey picks up the win. Rey dedicated this match before in a promo segment to Dominic. And at the time, I was like, come on, Rey. Don't dedicate this L to Dominic. But sure enough, he wins. Won it for his son. So maybe next week we can get the Fiend putting the mandible claw on Dominic. Either way, we'll see how that goes next week. I'm sure that I can't imagine that Rey Mysterio is going to be the Universal Champion next week, but we shall see. Braun versus Seth, which, as I mentioned, I forgot was a match that was happening. This was nothing new. It was nothing different from their Clash of Champions match, and I didn't need to see it again. But just skipping right away into the finish, Braun has Seth up for a power slam, but the lights go out. Fiend comes in, puts the mandible claw on Strowman and puts him down. And just like last week, he crawls towards Rollins, then goes back to putting the claw on Strowman. The lights go out, and that is how Raw goes off the air, with the Fiend and Bray Wyatt's maniacal laugh echoing throughout the arena as the screen is black and Raw goes off the air. So, that's all I got for you. This was a pretty solid show. It was a lot more in-ring centric. There were a few little promo segments that I didn't cover because, they're not really worth covering sometimes. But I did neglect to mention that stupid Ricochet interview, though, before the Fatal 5-Way, where he just says that he's going to prove that superheroes are real. I'm sure all the three-year-olds who watched Monday Night Raw really appreciated that. Yeah. But a fairly solid show. I thought the 5-way match was really good. The Gable and Corbin match was pretty good. Cross and Banks wasn't bad. Braun and Seth, I didn't need to see it again, but the Fiend ending was fine. Even though it is kind of the same thing they did last week, I'm still interested in what they're doing with the Fiend and Rollins. Because now with the Fiend putting down Strowman, in the last few weeks, you remember that Bray had said in the Funhouse segments that both Braun and Seth hurt him deeply in a past life. And, they did the thing that I talked about on this Funhouse, where Bray said that, what was it? Sheesh, let me scroll back up. It was something about those closest to you. Here it is. I know what it's like to be abandoned by those you care about most. And that goes back to Braun, because Braun split from the Wild, I was about to call them the Wild Card family. Jesus. The Wyatt family, when he got drafted to Raw in the original brand split. And then he went on his own. He had a lot of success. So I can assume that that's what Bray is talking about. I still don't really know what Seth did to him other than, the stuff they did with the Shield versus the Wyatt family. But other than that, I don't really know what specifically he could be talking about. Either way, though, it's interesting that the Fiend has chosen not to attack Seth at all. And instead, in this instance, as he said, he protected Seth from Braun Strowman. Because the Fiend also does not like Braun Strowman either. So, it's an interesting dynamic. And I'm interested to see where they continue to go to that, where they, with the Hell in a Cell match in just a couple weeks. So, we'll see where that goes. There seems to be a lot of people speculating that the Fiend is going to not win the title at Hell in a Cell, with the reports of the house shows that apparently they're doing Bray versus Seth on the house shows, and they're having Bray get disqualified to lose. Like, he puts the mandible claw on, but Seth has the ropes and he doesn't break the hold. Now, the problem is, you can't do that finish in a Hell in a Cell match. Even though last year we did see a Hell in a Cell match end without a finish, with the Roman Reigns and Braun Strowman Hell in a Cell match, where they both laid there for 2 hours after Brock Lesnar interfered. So, now you have to wonder, if their goal is to somehow get out of this with Seth being champion, then what are they going to do with it being a cell match? And I'm very concerned that they're not going to go with the Fiend here. I think that there's no way you can do anything but put the title on the Fiend. Now that you've put him here, like I've said that from the beginning, I would have rather built him up more before this. But now that he's here, he has to win. There's no two ways about it. And if he doesn't win, then they've already messed it up. But on that great note, that's all I have time for today. We'll be back here tomorrow with the SmackDown review. We'll see if I decide to live stream that one or not, but either way, it'll be on the channel tomorrow. We have the thrilling Kevin Owens versus Shane McMahon lawsuit to look forward to. We'll be there to review that. We'll have NXT on Wednesday. We'll have some more stuff on the channel on Thursday, like the AEW Power Rankings and predictions for the first episode on TNT that I'll have probably Thursday or Friday. Yeah, and then next week we're getting into the SmackDown on Fox, AEW debut. That'll all be here. It's a great time to be making content. But until then, thank you all for watching. Later.